What myth or folklore do you firmly believe in? 1. The Banshee. Being part Irish, I have heard tales about it as a child. I grew out of it and stopped believing in it for a while. A banshee is supposed to scream when you are going into a situation where it is unlikely for you to come out alive. So, I was driving down the road on a rainy day and I hear this blood-curdling scream in my ear that sent a shiver up my spine. There was no one behind me, so I slammed on the brakes before crossing at the intersections. Sure enough, a huge pickup truck comes speeding down the middle where I would have been and would have been hit. I sat there for a minute and I couldn't get the scream out of my head. Then I thought, banshee. I pulled into a gas station and called my dad's grandma, who had told me the stories as a child. I told her what happened and to my shock she chuckled and said, "My dear, you were warned and listened to the banshee. Your great-grandfather did not." 2. Dark Watchers. I went up to the Santa Lucia Mountains to be with my friend in her cabin for the weekend. Everything was fine during the day, totally normal. When night came, I woke up and decided to go to the kitchen for snack. Looking through the window, I could see the figure of a man with glowing eyes in the trees. I freaked out and ran to my friend's bedroom and told her what I saw. She looked at me and said, "Oh, the Dark Watchers. Don't worry, they are just curious and won't do harm." I was stunned at what I had heard. I left the next morning, but made sure to say goodbye. There is a Native American belief that when you die and death comes for you, you have a right to a last dance, and all death can do is watch. It makes me feel so sad but so happy at the same time. The Macarena. Truly death's dance. Megaconda. It's just a really, really big anaconda, and since those snakes grow continually throughout their lives, I wouldn't be surprised if some have, in the past, gotten over 50 feet or more. Titanoboa. It did exist about 60 million years ago. The ones they have found have been up to 42 feet long. The Sid fairies and fairy rings. Might be silly superstition, but I'm not exactly gonna mess with it, you know, just in case. Romans did the same when they conquered new lands. They'd pay homage just in case. I'm actually with you on this one. I hike a lot, deep in the woods. No one else for miles. Don't step in the rings. Don't follow the lights. Red clothes. Wear iron. Don't give your real name. It's weird because I'm generally pretty scientifically minded, but I can't let go of this one particular thing. Anyway, as you say, just in case. Coca-Cola settles my stomach. I know there are studies on this saying it doesn't, but it does. I know this isn't in the spirit of the question, but it's the only myth I believe. I drank flat Coke for morning sickness, and it worked. Cola syrup is an old Timmy nausea remedy. The Boggart. A mischievous little spirit hailing from Scottish origins, lives in the house and does both good and bad things for the residents of the house. My dad has been losing things for as long as I can remember, and apparently it happened even when he was a little kid, according to my nana. Literally, things would go missing that had just been set down in our house growing up, and be found in the most bizarre places, like a shaving razor in the fridge, every scissor in the house in one random drawer. When I was little, I read a book about Scottish folklore and found the beastie that had been following my dad around. So I started leaving out little treats and milk in tiny saucers. Talking to the Boggart. I am the only person who can find anything in that household, and I think it was because I bribed it so much as a kid. Never lose things now. At least nothing like what it was like growing up. My parents still live in a relative chaos of not being able to find things. Well, I think the bribing is just ridiculous. This past holiday season, I had a nightmare one night where I was chased by 3 polar bears. The very next day, we had a big holiday party at work where we did a white elephant gift exchange. I received a snow globe with 3 polar bears in it, and that freaked me out. I have no idea what it means, but our brains are weird. I would swear, not saying I really believe now, that as a kid I would dream things that would then happen. I dreamed about a bicycle accident in advance once. Could really be a coincidence for me though. I had a few bike accidents. Things in the fields and woods. I'm from the south, and I bet over half the people who live near cornfields and crap will tell you the same thing. Don't go into an abandoned barn at night. Something lurking will follow you back wherever you go. If something whispers in the tall grass or field, you don't reply or look back. Go inside. If something screams from the woods, Don't you dare look and try to see what is calling you. When traveling near cornfields they'll watch you from within and maybe follow the car for a bit. At night if something scratches on your window or house, don't reply. I don't know what the actual frick these things would be. Maybe the wind. But I'm not going to find out. Even the older people know that. Demons in the woods? Maybe. Skinwalkers? Native Americans have stories for a reason. All I'm saying is don't frick with the woods or fields at night. Ibu Gogo and Orang Pendak and the islands around Papua New Guinea, especially on Flores, where Homo floresiensis bones were found. The folklore is, loosely, people arrive on the islands and soon after settling in are greeted by these tiny people from the forests. They live relatively in peace for a long time, coexisting and staying out of each other's ways, maybe a bit of trade, but normal for multiple cultures living on islands together. The little people speak their own language which is very different from the islanders we know today. Eventually the peace breaks down when some of the little people kidnap and in some versions, eat a human child, so the islanders begin to hunt them down. Until almost none of the little people of the forest exist. They were reported by islanders and even the Dutch colonizers as recently as 300 years ago, but then sightings dropped off. Then they picked up again in modern times, probably due to the legend being more well known by non-locals who went and mistook local wildlife for the forest people. I don't think they're around today, but I'm very sure they existed very recently in history and the folklore became a very metaphoric tale of the broader history between Homo floresiensis and modern man when they first settled the islands thousands of years ago. Most things in the ocean, like the kraken, still alive megalodons, sea monsters, etc. We have explored a tiny fraction of the ocean and we constantly find new things when we go on deep sea exploration trips. I'm not sure which specific myths or folklore I believe in, but I absolutely believe the ocean has some weird, scary, strange things and we have only uncovered the tip of the iceberg. Feely the ghost. I act and operate the spotlight in this ancient playhouse. I mean no one can remember it not being there. Was a church in the 1700s. Has a mess of uncharted tunnels snaking through the walls and floors kind of thing. Me and the other actors crew members created Feely to explain all the weird crap that goes on in that place. I don't consider myself a believer in the supernatural, but I, like everyone else in my theater company, believe in the ghost wholeheartedly. We've written him an entire backstory, and it's not uncommon to see the smartest, most logical person you will ever meet. Matter of factly telling Feely to knock it off when the power does out randomly or the fire escape door won't stop swinging open no matter what we do. It's customary to have a crew member stand by the door to the house and listen for footsteps on the stairs while our director is giving the start of show speech. Guaranteed they hear footsteps. Open the door long enough to let someone from the bottom make it up into the house. It's Feely and if he's let in, we know the show will be flawless. I 100% believe my childhood home was haunted. However, the ghost or spirit or whatever was never harmful or evil, maybe a little mischievous. It would even do helpful things like make a coat on the coat hook fall to reveal that missing jacket hidden beneath. We never named it, but we would talk to it. I said goodbye as we moved. In the region of the Scottish Highlands that I grew up in, most people are superstitious to quite an extent. Couple of events in my life really pushed this into my beliefs. In Gaelic folklore, there is a lot of witches, werewolves, soul reapers, banshees, giant green death dogs and all that jazz. I remember one time my gran had told me stories about witches and how they helped or fricked crap up. One day, I woke up with a splitting headache and went greeting and complaining to her. I was about 8 or 9, and she asked me to walk over to the table. She proceeds to take and rub an egg on my forehead to remove the bad. After a few seconds, she breaks the egg onto the table to reveal black blobs in the whiten yolk. The headache was gone. Still freaks me out. She was definitely a witch. 100%. My mum has many other weird things with her growing up. Best gran ever. Amazingly, the egg thing is done throughout Latin America, the Philippines and Italy without any historical, ethnic or cultural relationship between the practices it originated from. Ancient Greeks probably did something similar too and then offered the eggs to Hecate. Has no idea Scottish people did that too. It's fascinating. Aliens, I guess. I don't believe aliens have visited Earth or that the government is covering up their existence or anything. I think that, given how enormous the universe is, and how many stars and planets there must be, I think we must not be the only planet where life evolved. I've had a few replies saying that aliens aren't myth folklore. I thought they were, because of cryptids and UFOs being attributed to aliens. A theory that my friend suggested is that we are one of the early species in the universe, which is why we still do not have the technology to go farther than a couple of planets away at most. Or even that maybe there are other conditions that we don't know about that allow life to form. Skinwalkers. Never seen one, but I live in Arizona and the number of native people who dare not to talk about them, adamantly swear their existence, and just the fact that the Sonoran Desert is so vast and mysterious makes me firmly believe in them. Seeing the future. I don't know how, but there are things in my dreams which have then happened in reality. Minor things mostly, but it's the freakiest crap ever. It's happened way too often to be a coincidence. I live in the American West, and have family I regularly see in the Southwest. There's things in the desert at night that you can't explain. Deep in the Navajo Nation, seeing a coyote running alongside your car, keeping pace as you are doing 65 plus mph will send chills so far down your spine you'll feel them in your butthole. I guess what I'm saying is that I 100% believe in skinwalkers and I am God my family doesn't live in New Mexico anymore. Frick, I have a super good podcast on Skinwalker Ranch if you want me to tell you. I couldn't even go outside after listening to it. It's sketchy as frick. And I live in Wisconsin. Cryptids, especially the more modest ones like the long-tailed bobcat, because I've seen one. I was out hunting for mushrooms and found this big, red turkey tail with the same color scheme as a brown rainbow and sat down to look at it. It smelled like chicken livers, probably due to the iron content. Right to the left of me was a short berm with some cedar twigs and grass and crap. I turned to the left, thinking I heard something in the trees, and what I thought was a badger came out. I put on my glasses, got a good look at it from 20 feet off, and it looked like a bobcat, with the ear tips and everything, but the color was dang near white, with a tail like a Maine Coon. It looked around, and let out a squall, then fricked off back into the trees, and that's how I know at least one cryptid is real. In all reality, the long-tailed bobcat is probably a cross between a bobcat and a housecat, but I still saw one. Poltergeist, negative energies that affects things. A little backstory. I live alone, and I went through periods and spikes of depression caused by fricked up crap from my childhood coming back to bite my brain's butt, and during the lowest point of multiple spikes, crazy crap would happen. I'm talking things like a painting I have nailed to the wall sort of just falling, my bed and only my bed shaking, random thumps in walls, getting static shocks while simply sitting down, and rooms being dark despite having broad and bright daylight shining through windows. One of my friends who visited me actually took note of this and mentioned it. These events happen only during spikes. Doesn't matter if it's in the middle or the day or night. If I was in a spike, there was a good 90% chance of paranormal events to occur. TLDR. I believe poltergeists are real or that people can give off negative energies when feeling generally negative. It's silly, but I really believe in mermaids. I don't think they look like pretty ladies with tails, but I think that the ocean is so vast and unexplored that they could be lurking somewhere out there. The domovoi. In Russian folklore, houses have spirits, and these are the domovoi. The spirit is, in some versions, the original owner of the house, and watches over those who now inhabit the house. I lived in a house for 13 months where the original owners, a married couple, had died in the house, and I definitely felt their spirits there. However, it always felt like the spirits were trying to help me. While I was living in that house, I became interested in folklore, and it was then that I first read about the domovoi. My immediate reaction was, this sounds like what I've been experiencing. A sixth sense or enhanced foresight into things in the future, like premonitions or precognitions and dreams. For example, There have been instances where I have seen things that haven't been there and they've helped me. One example that will always stick in my mind is when I was a goalkeeper and I was facing a penalty. I could see some figure pointing to my mid-left of the goal. I feel my brain subconsciously trust this figure and I dive to the mid-left of the goal and catch the penalty almost perfectly. Too precise to be a coincidence. Another story my mum told me was that when she was in her 20s-30s she had a dream of her grandmother throwing her a lottery ticket with a specific set of numbers. I can't remember the numbers my mum told me that she saw, however she said that she could only remember some of the numbers on the ticket. She wakes up the next day and puts the numbers she remembers on her card. On her way home from work she is listening to the radio and the winning numbers are being read off. The first 3 numbers match up with what was on the ticket that her grandmother gave her. The final reason why I believe that this myth exists is that I have always heard quiet voices that alert me when something is wrong or when I am doing something right. In addition to this, I almost always have a feeling that something could be wrong or someone needs help, and I can sometimes vividly see what might happen if I don't talk to them or if I don't do a certain thing and the repercussions of my actions. From this I have been able to avoid things that could become a bigger problem. My mum thinks it is some gene that she had and now I have. I believe her. I hope I get a lottery card that nets me millions. That taking lava rocks off of the Hawaiian Islands will curse your family. You know how mothers get when their children are taken? Try doing that to an immortal lava goddess. Knocking on wood. It has to be real wood, and you have to do it fast. A still-rooted living tree is stronger protection because its spirit is what you're actually calling for, but carved wood still has some access to that in a pinch. For most superstitions, I'm of the opinion, why the frick would I mess with that? It takes nearly no effort to follow it, and on the chance it's real, it's not worth the risk to ignore. So I will wake up my tree spirits to save me from repercussions when I basically challenge anyone listening to prove me wrong. And I'm not gonna actively risk dangerous crap out of unearned confidence in the face of stuff I don't actually know much about. The Jersey Devil. I mean, come on. There is totally some crazy looking devil creature roaming the woods of New Jersey. It's New Jersey after all, and if not here then nowhere. Chuckles in Florida. Comparative mythology. I am of the opinion that all major religions and mythologies throughout history have all been trying to teach us the same things, and that the differences between them are largely superficial. That is, how it's presented, which author wrote which book or story, and the method of propagation, written versus spoken. You could liken it to watching an opera or a play or some other type of live performance, but watching the same play at different times, in different cities, with entirely different stage sets and casts, with different improv dialogues and direct edits. It's obvious that the actor who played the role of Bob in Cincinnati is a wildly different person in appearance and manner than the actor who played George in Pittsburgh, but I'll be damned if there weren't some crazy coincidences between the two. Both of them trying to tell us to be good people at heart. Bob died and came back to life 3 days later. George was in a freaking coma for 3 days. Comparative mythology is an intriguing look into the subject of world religions. Instead of examining the differences, they examine the similarities. They've found that certain archetypes are repeated across the different mythos. If 2 or 3 shared archetypes, it could be a stroke of chance. But what about when all of them have the same character or storyline? No way, that's chance. I personally don't study it, but I think it's interesting as frick. Didn't know comparative mythology was a thing, but glad I'd come to this conclusion on my own. I described it a few years ago as religions being separate paths up the same mountain. The views and terrain will be different, but the end goal, the peak, is still the same. We know more about outer space than we do our deepest oceans. I guarantee there are things at the bottom we can't even comprehend. The same way a giant squid was mythical to ancient sailors. Basically anything supernatural. I've got a skeptical mentality due to 2 reasons. 1. There is so much of our own world along with the rest of the universe that we have yet to explore. It'd be pretty close-minded and egotistical to think we're the only habitable world. 2. Humans are pretty dumb. I doubt it's that hard to slip past us one way or another. I'm a big fan of the paranormal, but I don't care if others don't share my beliefs. I believe in ghosts and crap, but if you don't, that's fine as long as you're not a dong about it. But prophetic dreams are real, and so are glitches in the Matrix. I've experienced them and there's no other explanation I can find. Prophetic dreams are real. I've had them too. I'd like to hear about your glitch in the Matrix experiences if you feel like sharing. I'll throw in an oldie, reincarnation. Honestly, the only reason I believe in it is due to the fact that if you apply it to thermodynamics, it sorta makes sense. Cause where do your memories and experiences go afterwards, since that took energy to create? How the ancient people that eventually created Hinduism knew this? No idea, unfortunately. I believe we have aliens here on Earth in many varieties, but when we find one we just classify it as a new animal since they don't fit the alien stereotype. I think they're especially in the oceans as well. A global flood, wiping out most of humanity. If I recall correctly, multiple texts from different parts of the world state something similar to this occurring. Early civilizations were centered around water, frequently rivers. Rivers have a tendency to rise, so it's logical that ancient cultures would have a myth about a global flood. The Nordic mythology, specifically the Eddaic poems and such. Not that I believe the stories to be about gods, but that there was believed to be incredible people who did incredible things. Shared consciousness, and that people who operate on the same wavelengths can pick up on each other's emotions, thoughts, feelings, ideas. Pantheism is one of the oldest philosophical positions known to history. It says that the universe itself is mind, and what we call our mind is the universal mind's imaginings. The implication of this position is that everything you and I think of as reality only exists as conscious experience. I can sit down at a table and agree there's a table. Traditional philosophy would say that is because the table exists regardless of if anyone is around to see it. But what about a table no one has ever seen, or will see? What can you say about that table? Pantheism doesn't have this problem, because the table only exists as conscious experiences. In this case, as you and my experiences. The universe being all conscious experiences that exist, implies a table that no one could see wouldn't exist, because it is not part of any conscious experience. I firmly believe conscious experience is all we can know, and ever will know. Even then we're very limited in what we can say is absolutely true, and not just true because our senses and experiences tell us it is. For all we know, our brains are simulated in a computer. Many people believe that. I don't know if I believe specific ones, but cryptids in general. It's easy to hear about the Kentucky Goblins, or Bigfoot, or Chupacabras, or whatever, and call bulls. However, some of these cryptids have a lot of people who report experiences with them. There are also several real creatures like the giant squid that was until recently thought to be a cryptid. RC is the ultimate cola. All other colas are sinking sand, and I stand on RC. Now don't worry, RC is just dormant right now, but once their glow line comes out, it's gonna blow all the other colas away. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.